Hello everyone. Today in this class we are going to discuss about aggregate planning. Aggregate, the name suggests that the meaning of aggregate is family or line. So aggregate means in total, in an aggregate, in combining whatever the decision we take for the organization is called aggregate planning. So it is a intermediate time horizon. Aggregate planning is also called a intermediate time horizon or middle term planning. That is, we can also say it is a tactical planning. We need to find the resources, we need to determine how much the resources we need for this intermediate time horizon to meet the demand of the market. So, the resources, we plan the resources needed for this intermediate time horizon to meet the demand. So, what is the intermediate time horizon? We have already discussed in our previous class. The intermediate time horizon is the middle term planning. So, it is also known as tactical or corporate level planning. It starts from 3 months or 6 months to 18 months, sometimes 3 months to 18 months. It depends on the different type of organization, but it is mainly in months. Sometimes it is also extended to 24 months. So it starts from 3 months to 24 months. That is called a aggregate planning, intermediate time horizon, or we can also say it is a tactical or corporate level planning. Aggregate, the meaning of aggregate is family or line, product family or product line. Aggregate planning matches the supply and the demand. It is a balance between supply and demand. If we plan for the total product line, means how much we are going to produce in this time horizon between 6 months to 18 months, what is in total number of products we are going to produce. In this intermediate time horizon, like 6 months to 18 months, what is the quantity we are going to produce? How much we are going to produce? So, the total quantity, the total product line we are saying, the number of quantities in total we are going to manufacture. That is called aggregate planning. When we say about a product line, means number of products will come under one product line. Suppose take the example of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has a different product line. If you take the beverage one, so Coca-Cola has the original Coca-Cola, then Diet Coke, Coca-Cola Zero Sugar, Cherry Coke, Vanilla Coke. These are different flavors of the product line. So if suppose these are, suppose the original Coca-Cola original we are producing in this intermediate time horizon 1000 bottles. So the Diet Coke is 1500, the Coca-Cola Zero Sugar is 2000. Then what is the total amount? The total amount is 1000 plus 1500 plus 2000. It is total is 4500. Suppose 4500 bottles we are producing. So what is the total resource we need to produce the number of bottles? What is the total resources? Maybe resources in terms of the capital, in terms of the material, raw material, in terms of the machinery, in terms of the labor force, everything we need to plan to produce the total number of products in the product line. I have given a small example of Coca-Cola. Can take different product lines, and when we plan in total, different size, different shape, different number of items. When we go on calculating the total amount and we plan in total, what is the total number of, aggregate number of products we are producing, and what is the resource we need to produce this much of product, it is called aggregate planning. We don't go to the not and bold label or the SKU, that is stock keeping unit label of uh, calculation. We only see what are the number of products we are producing and what are the resources we need to produce these products. So we can say it is a balance between the supply and the demand. The main objective is to make a balance between the supply and the demand. How much demand we need and what is the supply or the resources we need to produce. The objective is to a company-wide game plan for allocating resources. We need to allocate the resources and develop an economic strategy how we can minimize our cost in the intermediate production plan or horizon. Meeting demand strategies. How we are going to meet the demand. The adjusting capacity, we need to adjust the capacity. The resources necessary to meet demand are acquired and maintained over the time horizon of the plan. How much resources we need in this time horizon? Like maybe 3 months to 6 months or 6 months to 10 months or 6 months to 18 months. In this time horizon, what is the resources we need? That is, we need to plan the capacity. Minor variation in demand are handled with overtime and undertime. Here, we can go for overtime production if there is a minor increase in demand, or if it is any changes in the demand or decrease in demand, we can go for the undertime. We can go for hiring and firing of employees. We can also go for use of the capacity, with number of machines, how much we are going to use. If the demand is increasing, we go for using more machines. When the demand is decreasing, we can go for using less machines. So these are the ways of your variation we can make. That is the capacity adjustment. Then we need to manage the demand. Then proactive demand management. It is a proactive state, not a reactive state. It is a proactive step. Before doing the things, we need to plan each and everything so that we are not able to face any difficulty in future production process. This is the total aggregate planning. See, I'm saying one thing here. In the BPUT university exam, every university exam question paper, there is a long question, 16 marks question, always about aggregate planning. We always have a question from aggregate planning of 16 marks. So, 16 marks question means you have to write all the detailed things about aggregate planning. Always there is, we can expect this time also this question. Every question paper, previous year question paper you visit, you will find a question of long question of aggregate planning. So this picture. If you see this is all about the aggregate planning process. Here we can see some inputs to aggregate planning, and these are the outputs of aggregate planning. What is the input to aggregate planning? Demand forecast is a input to aggregate planning. Company policies are the input to aggregate planning. Strategic objective is the input to aggregate planning. Financial constraint is a input to aggregate planning. Capacity constraint is a input to aggregate planning. So these are the input we need to first take while planning, while doing the aggregate planning or the intermediate time horizon planning. Demand forecast. Demand forecast will tell us what is the requirement of the demand. That is the sales forecasting. We can analyze the past data. We can go for analyzing the past data. When data availability is there, we go for analyzing the past record, past data, and we go for estimating the future demand. On the basis of the past data, we estimate the demand of the future when data availability is there. If data availability is not there, we go for qualitative analysis, that is Delphi technique, market survey. These are some of the techniques we use for qualitative analysis. This is all about the demand forecast, because as it is a balance between your supply and demand, we should know our demand so that we can plan the resources accordingly. Company policies, the rules, regulations of the company, the organization, where it is located, in which state it is located, what is the rule and regulation of that state we need to follow. So these are what is the market, which market we are going to distribute our product. So what are the policies for that? We need to know all the things. Then strategic objective. Strategic objective is nothing but the long-term objective or the long-term goal of the company. That is the long-term goal of the company. We can say that is the strategic objective of any company or any organization. Financial constraints. What is the flow of the capital? What is the flow of the fund throughout the plant? How much capital we have, or any loan we are having, we have to pay the interest. So these are all the financial constraints we need to know. Then capacity constraints. What is the capacity we are available now to produce or to meet the demand? So how many machines we have? What is the total plant capacity we can calculate? How much every day we can produce or every month we can produce? How we are going to meet the demand of the market? So these are all the capacity constraints. Capacity constraints means there is limitations. We need to go for this. We have to understand these limitations. Maybe there is skilled labors are available or not, machines are available or not. So what is the constraint we need to understand? These all are the inputs for any organization to go for the aggregate planning. What is the output? The output is, the first one is size of workforce. Size of workforce, if you say, that is the how much workforce we need to start the process or to start the production. What is the size of workforce or size of labor we need to produce our product? So that is the size of workforce we can plan. If you are producing, the demand is increasing, you can go for hiring the people. If the demand is decreasing, now there is no demand is less in the market, so you can go for firing the employees. So these are the size of workforce we can decide by aggregate planning. Then inventory level. What are the inventory level? What is the material we're having in our hand? So that is, we need to know the transaction of the inventory. What is the flow of material? What we are having inside our organization and what we need to buy for the product. Because when we are planning in a total family, like we are planning for the product line. What are the products? Different variety of products are in the product line. We need to plan for each product how many amounts we are going to produce. So we need to check the inventory level, what we are having in our stock, so that we can go for purchasing or putting the order for the resources or raw materials. Then we have to go for planning the regular time, overtime production. If we are able to meet the demand by regular time production, we have to go for doing the regular time production. We are able to meet the demand, then it is okay. If there is any variation in the demand, then we can go for overtime production. So that also we need to understand, and that we can plan in aggregate planning. According to that demand, we can know by the demand forecasting. Then subcontracting the production. Subcontracted means we can go for uh, depending on the third party, or we go for giving the contract to the other persons, other companies. They can produce for us. If we are not able to meet the demand in time, then you can go for outsourcing the product. So many companies are there, they can go for producing and they can sell their product under some other big brand. So big, if it is a brand value to know, keep the brand value. So many big companies, they go for subcontracting or giving the contract to the small companies or middle level companies. They can go for producing and sell the product, or give the product to the and sell the product under the big brands. So these are the subcontracting production. So these are the things we need to understand in case of aggregate planning. Now we'll discuss the backlog, back order and lost sale. Back order, we can say back order is a temporary unavailability of the product. If we are putting an order and the product is not available in the stock, but it can be fulfilled in the future period of time, like very recent period, then we can say that is a back order. But backlog may be different from back order. Backlog means the production may be not yet started, maybe due to capacity constraints, we are facing backlogs, or it is in between the supply chain. So we cannot say that when it will be going to be fulfilled. But backlog sometimes is good for the companies, because we say if there is an increase in demand of the product, then it can go for backlogs. One back order can be backlog, but backlog cannot be back order. So these two are very different, and when we so back order can be backlog, but backlog cannot be back order. So what happens in this case? Both are totally different. But when we have a proper aggregate planning, maybe this type of situations we are able to handle in the in this type of situation we are able to handle if we have a proper aggregate planning. What is lost sale? Lost sale is if, see, every time lot of competitors are coming to the market. If the product is not available in our store, then customers can visit some other brand to purchase the product. Same type of, but maybe some other brand they can go for purchasing. So this is a loss of sale for the previous company or the brand.